articles that I've read over the past few weeks looking at how online learning is revolutionizing K-12 education and benefiting students. And so I'm looking at virtual online learning. The article in the abstract just very clearly points out its purpose of the study and recognizing that virtual learning can overcome geographic and demographic restrictions and improve the quality of instruction, increasing productivity and lowering costs, kind of as a reason, offering reasons for having online virtual options. I think it's interesting. This article was written in 2010. And so when looking back at trends that were going on in education in 2010, certainly we saw the school choice movement kind of amping up. And the article spoke to, do families live near a good school? Are they placed with the best teacher? If not, if there's some concerns there, then maybe families need another choice or another option. And that virtual learning we can have mass customization of education, recognizing that 27 states have some form of a virtual option in 2010, and that 24 states and DC offered full-time virtual instruction. I think that would be very different now, especially after COVID. But also looking at, the study says that students perform better than face-to-face instruction, and I kind of question that, wonder why. What students are included in the study, looking at students that typically sign up for virtual learning, maybe are more motivated, maybe even some higher performing students that are wanting to, accelerate their learning process. And so kind of what information and what data were used to determine that. Also, when looking at making the argument that online learning is more cost effective, again, what data were used for that? Recognizing in our traditional schools, the cost of staffing, the cost of meals and transportation are certainly fairly high. So does that, if we're not offering transportation, meals, things like that, is that where the cost comes in at? Also, families may be providing more resources that are needed for the online learning as opposed to the school providing that. So the article spoke about kind of defining the difference between virtual and face-to-face learning, the scope of content, the teacher interactions. It mentions synchronous and asynchronous, which are certainly common terms today. Looking at the location and how students can access the online instruction, the jurisdiction, maybe even looking at funding sources, and then the range of students that are able to be served. Article spoke about improved learning, and so increase to high quality teachers, mass customization, again, whether that's with pacing or content, being able to kind of customize their learning experience, increase flexibility for students and families, but also for teachers, and then improve productivity and efficiency and innovation. And I would argue that we've seen many of those things as schools have responded to COVID over the last year and a half. The article made recommendations for policymakers, looking at the funding and saying the funding should follow the student, maybe even looking at charter schools and how they can open up to provide this all online virtual learning. And so, again, as I read this article, I kind of looked at it through a very critical lens, looked a little bit more about the Heritage Foundation and found out that that is a conservative public policy group. And typically, political groups associated with more conservative views tend to support school choice a little bit more than some other groups. And so I think this article very much aligns right with that, of offering families choice. And then in reflecting about what we've learned over the last year and a half, we realized that virtual learning is great for some students and for some teachers. I can think of one student in particular that, because she has a health condition and it's not all that safe for her to be in school right now, she has enrolled in an online virtual program, and it is very rigorous and very time consuming, but it's very much meeting her needs. But also, even prior to COVID in our county, we had our high school had a certain number of seats that were available for the North Carolina virtual public schools. So students might take 3 classes face-to-face, but then take 1 class through the virtual academy. And that was a great option for those students. And then in response to COVID, we now have a virtual academy in our district. It's its own school that is an all online option for families, and that is certainly meeting the needs of some of our students that are highly motivated, that are engaged in the work, and that's certainly been a good thing for them. So it was a very interesting article, especially to reflect over things that have happened over the last 11 years, but I hope you enjoyed my summary.